Alright, so many of you asked me in the comment section a couple of days ago about my shred build that I'm currently using, so I decided that it's about time to finally share it with you. Now, first thing first, I want to mention the few positives and the few negatives about the build, so that you can decide for yourselves whether you want to proceed with it, when you want to test it. So the positives are the build is extremely fun, probably the fastest farming build in the game, especially when it comes to Druid. And on top of everything, it is super satisfying. It is by far the best Druid build I've ever tried. It is super satisfying and fun to play. Now the negatives, unfortunately the time will come when you start hitting your head into a wall if you want to progress in Nightmare Dungeons. I just cleared tier 60, you're currently seeing footage of it, and I didn't have fun, which is unfortunate because the main idea of the build is to have fun. Well, tier 60 I didn't have fun, and to be honest, I don't have the perfect gear currently when it comes to rolls on my rings, on my amulet, on my boots, stuff like this. And of course I'm level 95, so if I get to level 100 and get the best rolls on my gear, probably just maybe the absolute best I can get with this build is tier 75. But if I'm to push Nightmare Dungeons, I would never use this build. It is not the way to go. When it comes to the skills I'm using Blood Howl, one of the best healing abilities in the game. Also, it gives you attack speed and cooldowns getting reduced every single time when you kill somebody, and you kill people or monsters quite often. Also, Hurricane, it boosts the skill levels of your primary attack skill, Shred. Also, it gives you damage reduction and slows, dealing damage in the process. Perfect. Debilitating Row is such a great ability. It makes sure that you are immortal for 4 seconds, and while this time is on, you make sure that you set the stage and you kill everybody. This is how I use Debilitating Row. The other way, when and if I'm going to use it, is when my cooldown is off and I'm surrounded and I need some damage reduction so I can survive, then I'll use Debilitating Row. And of course, Greasy Rage, it's self-explanatory, you need that unstoppable effect. Without it, you are lost. Also, Storm Strike, because I get a damage reduction and apply vulnerability, and I have Shred, which is self-explanatory, the bread and butter of the build. Now the build relies on stacking attack speed, if I have to explain it in a few words, and then trigger this particular effect, Ferocity. Every 6th werewolf skill hit critically strikes and deals 60% increased damage. So in a way, you're having very high attack speed, and you're triggering this over and over a very short period of time. This is how you do massive damage. Also, it has everything to do with the Paragon, but we're going to get to that later. Now, before we get to the skill, I just want to quickly explain to you what I use when it comes to uniques and legendaries. First thing I want to mention, you don't have to use rubies full life. I'm using those because I just realized that 15% damage reduction while fortified, I'm talking about the sapphires, it kind of felt underwhelming, probably because I don't have enough life. So I decided to swap it for flat life from rubies. It kind of felt better. Probably I'm going to change my mind later again, but all I'm saying is that you can go both ways, whichever way feels better for you, either rubies or damage reduction while fortified. It's up to you. Now, Tempest Roar is not a must in this particular build. If you don't have it, I would recommend to use, for instance, everything that's giving damage reduction as a werewolf, for instance this aspect, or if you want, you can improve your armor by 50%, which is also great. So this is your options if you don't have Tempest Roar. And if you don't have it, another thing that you can do is you can use Helmet, gives life and cooldown reduction. Unfortunately, I cannot do that on my Tempest Roar, but if you don't have it, you can use a helm that gives cooldown reduction. It's going to be very useful. The only unfortunate thing about not having Tempest Roar is that you won't be able to use your Hurricane and your Storm Strike while you are a werewolf, which is unfortunate. This armor is a must. Unfortunately, in my opinion, it's a must, so you must have it. If you don't have it, again, try to use something that gives you damage reduction or additional survivability, any way, shape, or form. When it comes to the gloves, I'm using Critical Strikes which Shred deal 27% of damage dealt as lightning damage, but if you want, you can use this one. They are both viable. It's totally up to you which one you want to use. I don't really enjoy fighting bosses with this particular poisoning aspect because I have to get away from them and jump, then get away, then jump. So I prefer to use lightning. But both of those have its places. So I cannot definitely say, definitely go for lightning, ignore that. It's up to you. You test them both, you decide for yourself. When it comes to the stats on your gloves, go for attack speed. Again, you need to stack attack speed, ranks of shred, and critical strike damage. Critical strike chances, sorry. If you have those 3, the 40s, whatever. If you have 17 or 27 of all stats, it's going to be probably the perfect set of gloves. Here, temerity, It is a really good unique, so it makes you very tanky, difficult to kill. So definitely use it if you have it. If you don't have it, use again one of those two. Do not use the aspect that turns your debilitating row into a werewolf skill. We're going to get to that why in a second because of the specific way I'm using debilitating row in this build. Also, we have those boots. While Hurricane is active, gain 2 ranks to your shape-shifting skills. So it boosts your damage and it boosts your way to heal. Awesome, right? Here, the core stats: damage reduction, damage reduction, damage reduction, and if possible, go ahead and use additional charges of evade. Unfortunately, I don't have it. My boots suck, but this is the best boot that I found so far. Alright, this is not a must, but it's extremely important. If you have it, the build is going to feel much better. Now the point is you kill those low life trash monsters and you constantly have 100% critical strike chance and you destroy everybody, and in the process your Greasy Rage is going to stack damage, critical damage after critical damage after critical damage, until the time comes when you'll be dealing massive damage, over 1 million, as you saw in the beginning of the video. This is why I call this build over 1 million damage, because it's not really that difficult to achieve. So all it takes is this particular item. If you don't have it, it's still possible, but this particular item makes sure that you're critting all the time. So if you combine it with the high attack speed, with those two pieces, that make sure that your Greasy Rage is prolonged with 5 seconds and you're stacking critical damage, then at a certain point you'll be more or less one-shotting elites without any issues whatsoever. Also bosses, the Butcher, you name it. In fact, this is one of the ways that I'm killing the Butcher. If he's 10 or 15 levels above me, I just kite him until I get to a huge group of monsters and I kill many of them as possible. Then I jump on the Butcher, usually kill him in 2 or 3 seconds because I'm stacking this critical damage. And another thing, when it comes to the ring, your core skills deal up to 40% increased damage based on the amount of Fortify. This is very useful, and this definitely elevates your damage further. Now, there is another ring that you might use instead, which is the amulet that boosts your critical strike chance. Why is that important? Again, it's totally up to you which one you're going to use. As you can see, I have them both because I don't have the perfect ring. So why is this important? Because sometimes you're fighting boss and there is nobody around the boss. This particular item kind of it's not really that effective because you cannot really kill anybody. It's just the boss. So you cannot kill one boss and jump to the other boss. It doesn't work that way. It is just one boss. So you cannot kill him that easy. And if this is the case, the critical strike chance drops significantly. And if this is the case for you, then use Bloodhouse so that you can boost your critical strike chance. Alright, and when it comes to the stats that you have to go for on the amulet, and the amulet is really important to have cooldown reduction, so that you can make sure that your ultimate is more or less ready to go all the time. And for the rings, you need to have vulnerable, damage vulnerable, and also very important is to have life. Unfortunately, as you can see, I don't have a perfect ring. I'm trying to get the perfect ring for so long and I failed. So for instance, here I have life, here I have life, here I have vulnerable damage, but here when I have life, I don't have vulnerable damage and stuff like this. So what I'm trying to say, I didn't really get the perfect roll on my accessories, which is really sad. I can say that only my amulet is pretty decent. I really like it. Even though, again, it doesn't have the max roll on the rank and Venom passive. It doesn't matter. Now, when it comes to the offhand, it's very important once again to have offhand and one hand, not two-handed weapon, because you're going to get attack speed in the process, and that's important. You need to make sure that you're shredding as fast as possible. You need to be like a machine gun on the battlefield. When it comes to your offhand, most important stats, damage reduction and cooldown reduction. That's very important. As you can see, I have max roll on my cooldown reduction. This is the reason why I'm using this offhand. As you can see, you just have 771 item power, but still when it comes to utility, it provides massive utility with a 14.6 cooldown reduction. If I'm doing that, my ultimate has about 10 seconds after it expires and I kill a couple of monsters, then it has only 10 seconds left. And that's perfectly fine because I can survive by using debilitating roar if I am in trouble, because once my ultimate expires, I'm going to definitely have debilitating roar available. Okay, so the spirit boons, very quickly. We have 10% reduced damage from elites. This is self-explanatory here. 10% attack speed, very important. 30% critical strike damage. We're taking the extended duration of the ultimate, and we are taking the critical strikes with shape-shifting skills, heal you. Very important so that you can stay alive. Another thing, Calm Before Thunderstorm, many people use it, however, I don't really find it reliable. Like, on average, it will reduce the cooldown by 1 second, because on the first ultimate, it's not going to reduce it by nothing. The second ultimate, nothing, and the third ultimate, it will reduce it by 4 seconds. Something like this. So, Sometimes it works, but majority of the case it doesn't do anything. This is the reason why I'm not using it. It's simply not that reliable. If you have, for instance, a potion to increase your lucky hit chance, probably it will make sense. Or if your lucky hit chance is naturally higher thanks to rolls on your gear, then go ahead and use it. But in my case, I don't really use it. I don't find it that useful. All right, we got to the abilities, and now we have Storm Strike. It gives damage reduction once you hit somebody. That's important. Many people miss that part. You have to hit somebody. If you don't hit anybody, you're not going to get a damage reduction. And also it applies vulnerable, which is very good if I'm fighting a boss and my vulnerable expire. I need to make sure that again and make him vulnerable. So that's one is a must. Here I'm increasing the damage of my core skill and increasing the spirit cost in the process. Not a big deal, because once you are in your ultimate, the spirit cost is low in general. Increased critical hit chance against close enemies. We'll be fighting close range. Damage reduction while in werebear form, we're going to get to that in a second, but I guess you're probably guessing by now. I'm increasing my movement speed in werewolf form, and I have here Shred, which is the bread and butter of the build. I'm taking a debilitating roll here, and I'm also taking damage reduction for 6 seconds after using a defensive skill. I'm skipping companions completely. I'm getting here, taking Hurricane with damage reduction buff. I'm taking critical strikes to werewolf skills deal 23% of the base damage as poisoning damage. If you want, you can just use 1 point here. It's totally up to you, and you can allocate it here, for instance. It will make sense as well. So this one is not really that important. Just 1 point will do. And here, poison enemies take 40% additional critical strike damage. That's very, very useful. Another thing, Greasy Rage is a must. You cannot go without it. Late game, you're going to get wrecked if you don't have Unstoppable available all the time. And here, we have the heightened senses, very important. Upon shape-shifting into a werewolf or werebear, gain 12% damage reduction against elites for 5 seconds. So let me quickly explain to you why I'm using Debilitating Row to set the stage. So what I'm using is I activate Debilitating Row, and then I jump. Like, this is the way I usually play the build. Why is that? Because for one thing, I'm getting 70% damage reduction from here. I'm also getting 25% from here, just to hit. I have to hit somebody. Okay, so far that's 95. I'm getting additional 15. That's 110. Okay, I'm getting additional 20. That's 130. And finally, I'm getting additional 12. That's 142. So I'm getting 142% damage reduction for about 4 or 5 seconds after I have my ultimate on, which is absolutely crazy. In a way, you are immortal. And this is the time you need in order to start rolling, in order to start piling up the critical damage. So this buys you enough time in order to become the unstoppable monster that you want to become while you are in your Grisly Rage. And of course, we want to make sure that we're triggering this as fast as possible. This is the main reason why we are stacking attack speed. So in a way, in a few words, this is why, and these are the skills that I'm using for this particular build. Alright, and a few words about the Paragon. The first thing I'm using is the damage to poisoned enemies, and I'm extending the duration by 33%, which is pretty cool, and I'm using it right here in the starter node. Also, vulnerable damage exploit. This, in my opinion, is by far probably the best glyph in the game. It works for any class or any build. It's really busted, not because you're gaining a vulnerable damage increase, but because you're making your enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds on every type of damage that you do, which is extremely busted. Next, here I have Werewolf. It boosts my damage in Werewolf form by 92%, which is huge, and I'm getting damage reduction while I'm in Werewolf form. I'm getting here Territorial, 97% damage to close enemies to 10% damage reduction against close enemies. Pretty cool. From this particular one, I'm just getting the Ancestral Guidance. Just boost my damage by 30% for 5 seconds after use 75 spirit. Very good. Here, Heightened Malice, that is a must. While there are 3 or more poisoned enemies, you deal 45% increased damage. Here, critical strikes with werewolf skill restore 2 spirit. That's very important. That's your way to generate spirit, so go ahead and use it 100%. When it comes to this glyph, it's exploit, already covered it. I'm taking also attack speed, and I'm planning to get this attack speed for additional 10%. I'm going to do that by level 100. Here, I have a glyph that basically boosts the rare nodes. I don't have great rare nodes here, but at least I have some armor. There we go. I can get another armor here, and I can get some shape-shifting skill damage on top of what I already have. So, in a way, did I miss something? Territorial, 97%. I already explained that. I think these are the glyphs and the Paragon, the basic Paragon tree that I'm using. I'm going to, of course, share that in the link for the build. Another thing that I want to mention is for this build, I tried to create a build which is not only all the way damage, it has survivability, so you're very, very tanky, and on top of everything, it deals massive damage. This is the reason why I go for maximum life every single time when I have the opportunity. For instance, look at this. I'm taking maximum life here, I'm taking it here. So every single time when there is a very, very close node that gives life, I'm going to take it. And this is the reason why I can go, I have to 11,700, but I can go as high as 13,000 life. If I change this one, there we go. I have almost 13,000 life. Still, it's not enough in certain dungeons I'm getting one-shotted. But what I'm saying is that apart from the gems, and there is one place in the Paragon tree that also gives you damage reduction. Was it here? There we go. Of the enemies that are poisoned. There are not many ways in the Paragon tree to increase your damage reduction. So it's either your gear, your Paragon, and more or less that's it, and your skills. While there are many, many ways in the Paragon tree to increase your life. This is the main reason why I went for certain nodes that give life, which many people neglect. But as you can see, I have 13,000 life in the process, and I feel quite tanky. So in a way, if I have to summarize, this is the build in a nutshell. Now I'm going to do a dungeon. I'm going to showcase how the build actually works in practice. Alright, we're in a dungeon. Basically, we're fighting this dungeon, which is not really one of the hardest dungeons on the planet, I have to be honest. And it's tier 54, so it's like a medium difficulty. The monster's about 15 levels above you. They are 108, 13 levels above you, to be exact. Anyways, I'm just going to demonstrate how strong the wolf is. There we go. You can see they couldn't really hurt me in the beginning, and I'm using this now to generate some power and destroy all the elites. This is the way this build works. You need to make sure to generate power by killing the trash mobs around the elites. And in the beginning, you buy yourself 3 or 4 seconds by simply standing in one position. I mean, you don't have to stand, but the point is you need to activate all your defensive skills. But you can trigger them by using the debilitating rod. This is the main reason why we are allocating actually points here, and also here. Because at a certain point we are going to get into a bear form, which is going to be really, really tanky. So you're not going to have any problems whatsoever staying alive for a few moments of time. And this time is actually absolutely enough for us so that we can generate enough critical damage and destroy everybody like we are currently doing. The problem arises once you're getting so weak, or the enemies are getting so strong, that the moment you jump, even on a regular mob, they simply one-shot you. Alright guys, I decided that this is by far the best part of the video, to demonstrate how and when the build actually stops working, so that you can keep that in mind. Currently I'm trying to fight this room of elites. Unfortunately for me, I died a couple of seconds ago, and now if I decide to approach them and to fight them, I'm in a lot of trouble because there are no trash mobs around them, and in order for my build to start working, I have to get my critical damage up. But as you can see, there is no way that I can possibly do that without taking huge amount of damage, and at the end of the day I just die. And this can happen to you quite often if you decide to push with this build. Sooner or later this is going to happen, or in other words, you're going to jump and you're going to die instantly, because every single monster in the group of monsters can literally one-shot you. So this is a downfall of the build in Nightmare Dungeons. If you decide to push, be prepared that such situations will happen inevitably. So I have to be careful. And currently once our it didn't expire, we just did the dungeon. It was quite easy. I was trying to say that you see, the moment ult expires, we have 10 seconds on the clock with the current setup, and that's pretty cool. So in a way, this is how the build works. You can use the same strategy to kill even the butcher 15 levels above you. If he's alone and you're alone, that's going to be a problem, because once again you cannot take advantage of your weapon. So what I would do if I face the butcher is I would kite him until I find a group of monsters. Then I'm going to activate my ultimate, kill the group of monsters, gaining a lot of critical damage in the process. Then I'm going to destroy the butcher. But again, the build underperforms if you have to fight only one strong enemy, there is nobody around you. It simply is not that good enough. And the more you climb on the Nightmare ladder, let's go that way, the more you risk getting one-shotted by elites or even by regular monsters. Alright guys, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please let me know in the comment section, give me a like, subscribe to the channel, and see you next time. Take care.
Perfect.